Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel McCullough, and I have been involved with the NSA since 2010, and I am a person who stutters, and I look forward to connecting with you tonight. Charlie?
Rachel, my name is Charlie Adams. I am in Columbia, South Carolina. I was a doctoral student. When I was a doctoral student, I was working with a lot of people who stutter on my caseload. And I realized, that they needed something that I couldn't offer them. And I wasn't sure what that was, but I knew that they needed to hear from other people who stutter. We needed to get them together. And that's how I found the NSA. And so I established my chapter back in 1999. And we've been going since then. And so it's been a great journey. I've enjoyed many conferences, presentations, and I look forward to tonight. Where should we start? You want me to start, Rachel, or you want to start?
Yes, if you can kick it off, that would
Yeah,
be
sure,
great. Just
sure.
as
So we're here to talk about covert stuttering. I don't know if everybody knows what that means exactly. Covert stuttering is something that someone who stutters is able to do to conceal their stuttering entirely. And there are lots of reasons why you may or may not want to do that. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. Um, how does it begin? Um, how does stuttering begin? Stuttering usually begins in childhood, and it's not long after you start stuttering that you figure out that something's off a little bit. You see the reactions of others. Maybe you get some adverse reactions, maybe in school, you get you get teased, or you get called on to read in class and you stutter a lot and your classmates giggle, and pretty soon you figure out that stuttering's not too cool as a kid. And it's not long before you try to figure out ways to navigate around that. Well, the most obvious one is not to speak at all. And that's a not uncommon way to do that. A lot of kids just don't speak if they don't have to. But there are other ways too. And we're going to talk about that. There are ways to navigate around it. And that's a whole journey too, because at some point it feels like you've got it beat. And then at other points you feel like, well, you're kind of trapped a little bit. So I guess it would be nice to see about when people started stuttering. Who started stuttering maybe around 3 to 5, 6 years old? Anybody? Okay, Tess. Anybody else start that early? James? Okay. How about, let's say, uh, 5 to 8, 9 years old? How about that? That's a little bit later. That's Rachel. Lisa, is that you too? Yep, great. Okay. So are there some people who stuttered later than that? And if so, let us know when you started stuttering. I think that would be good to know. If you haven't raised your hand yet, let us know when you started. Peter, you're muted. Still muted. Just click on the microphone. That should work. You want to try to figure that out and we'll come back to you, okay? Let's do that. As soon as I see your microphone on, I'll come back to you, okay? I'll keep watching. Would anybody else like to talk about when they started stuttering? Because it would probably be later than most. I think that's relevant to our topic because what's going on in your life when you start stuttering is relevant because um, when you're 3, 4, 5 years old, a lot of kids are struggling with learning language and words and stuff. And so you don't stand out so much when you start stuttering earlier. But if you start stuttering later, you do stand out. And that's when you quickly realize that something is wrong and you start trying to figure out what to do about it. Can anybody identify with that? What do you remember trying when you first started stuttering? What do you remember trying to do about it? Yeah, Keith?
I'll just try to hide it.
Okay.
I can remember trying to control it, but I just didn't know how.
So it definitely is a sense of loss of control. And that's
Absolutely.
pretty scary. That's pretty scary for a kid. You had this talking thing down pat, and now all of a sudden you don't. And so that quickly brings on a rush of emotion of fear. Fear gets in there pretty quick. And you start to get a little desperate. And the first thing you might do is just stop talking or stop talking any more than you have to. Because until you got this thing figured out, you don't want to talk because it's embarrassing or you don't know what's going on. So there are a lot of ways that people can get around stuttering now. As adults, we know a lot of the tricks. You can, some of us are very good at changing words. Some can use subtle tricks, like if you break eye contact for a second, maybe it's easier to get a word out, little things like that. What are some of your tricks? If you've got something like that, why don't you share with us? What are some of the ways that you get words out, which you couldn't do without that? Wouldn't be able to do without that little trick. I think Peter still wants to share. I hope you can find that microphone button. Or you could type something in the chat, Peter, if you want to. There should be a chat at the bottom. In fact, somebody's already put something in the chat. Let's see. I'm not a PWS. That's all right, Ginger. I'm not either. I've just worked with enough people who are that I learned a lot about it from them. I learned a lot about stuttering from people who are covert. Let's see.
Keith has his hand raised.
What's that?
Keith has his hand raised.
Keith? Oh, great. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, one thing that I would do is just, pretend like I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a good one, right? That's a good
Didn't
one. Look
work
real
very well
pensive.
when,
You
people
know,
would ask you a simple question like, what's my name? Or where am I from? Something like that. But if it was a more thoughtful question, I could at least prepare.
Yeah, that's
pretend
good.
like I
That's
was
good.
thinking.
I like that. What are some other devices that people use to avoid stuttering in situations like that? I don't want to say tricks. I want to, techniques, whatever. What do you do? Yeah, Isaiah.
I'd say try to find like a different word that's easier to say. So I know, like for myself, like S's are hard to get out sometimes, or like M's. So I'd immediately try to switch the word that I was gonna say.
Do you have a few switches that you're already in the habit of making? Are there certain words that you always switch to that other word?
No, honestly, it's more just off the top of the head. Honestly, I don't really have any exact ones, but
Okay. Okay. Well, the thing is, when you get to that point and you do this little workaround and it works, you got out what you wanted to say and you didn't stutter, it feels like a little bit of a victory, right? That feels really good. He has no idea that I stutter because I fooled him, right? And so that's part of the allure of covert stuttering. It's kind of like a rabbit hole. It draws you in pretty quickly. The better you get at it, the more confident you feel, the more tricks that you use, the more techniques you develop to get around it. And next thing you know, nobody has any idea that you stutter. And you feel like you've won. That doesn't always last, does it? Those little tricks kind of wear off a little bit sometimes. And so what do? Just look for new tricks, right? If something worked, there's got to be another way around that, right? Of course, the classic avoidance technique is not to talk at all. You can just nod and smile and pretend like you're thinking about it or something like that. Rachel, do you want to talk a little bit about how you started stuttering and when you started trying to work around it?
Real quick, Luke H has his hand raised.
Oh, good. Okay, Luke.
Yeah, I was going to say one of those tricks for me was to use filler words before I got to a word I knew I would struggle with. So instead of responding with my name when asked, I would say my name is Luke to build up momentum there.
Mm-hmm. Good one. That's a really good one. Thank you. Okay, Rachel?
Well, really glad everybody's here. First of all, I think it takes a lot of courage to even go to an NSA meeting, to even be among other people who stutter. I could not stand the sound of my own stutter, and really thought it was just the worst sound in the world. My stuttering was a lot of repetition of sounds. And I would say it is. And the fear that Charlie talked about, it was so pervasive, it really ruled my life, and that sweet sense of I was able, I don't know if I felt like I fooled people. I didn't realize that until I got into the NSA, but I felt like I saved face. I protected myself by not letting out that I stuttered. That feeling, it was like, it really was, I was chasing the dragon. I feel like my whole, my whole schooling and it became a real self-constructed prison in every sense of the word. So I started stuttering when I was 6. We think, my mom thinks that's when I started stuttering. And I remember one day in school talking to somebody, and I just, I stuttered. I don't know how it was that I stuttered, but I remember saying, "Oh, what was that? Did you hear that?" Like almost like I was surprised at what's coming out of my mouth. And I was like already at that young age trying to distance myself from what was happening. Like, oh, I don't know what this thing is here. Don't worry about that. Things really, for me, they got, I think I really started using substitutions and uh, all the tricks that Charlie talked about when I moved. And I had a new group. I moved in the 4th grade. It's a really tough time to move. And I was already the new kid. And then I was, I was fairly shy. I was very shy. And then when I stuttered, it just catapulted me into you don't want to talk to that girl, she's weird and all that. So I really, I just remember I did all the word substitutions. I did, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. A lot. I acted like I was, they used to say, airheads back then. I acted like I was ditzy or an airhead or just kind of like, oh, I don't know. And maybe as a woman, I was able, as a girl, I was able to get away with that. I don't know, because that's what, at least at the time, that was a thing. This is a while back. And then I remember just lowering myself. Like I would really, like I would look, yeah, act like I wasn't smart. I would I would really be afraid when people would ask me what my name was. Um, you know, I mean, I think everybody on this call has their story and has all the ways that they've tried to hide. For me, it really was the worst thing in the world to stutter. And I felt like I felt like there was no future. And um, I I didn't see a way out for myself. Um, and so if to survive I needed to switch words, then damn it, I was going to do that. Whatever. If I needed to excuse myself because this was the time when they go around and ask everybody what their name was. Thanks, Carl. That's what I was gonna do. So, Carl Coffey just asked a question. Can I answer the question?
Sure.
My aha moment. I was well into my career. So Carl Coffey asked, what was your aha moment? And I'm guessing, Carl, are you talking about when I realized like that I was a covert stutterer, that I was covert? Is that
So I was mostly asking because you had mentioned that, like, stuttering was, you thought of it as the worst thing, and that it just,
yeah,
it just wasn't good. And I know that,
yeah,
you're at the point now where you can actually talk about stuttering.
yeah.
And so at what point did you become more comfortable with it and kind of own the fact that, hey, I'm a person who stutters, I'm going to stutter?
So it's a great question. I think there were two phases for me. One is I was working with the therapist, so I tried everything in the world to not stutter. And then I realized I thought it was anxiety, but then I worked with the therapist who helped me to be comfortable with the fact that, there's something going on with my speech. And that's like a regular cognitive behavioral therapist. And then I started going to speech therapy. And I was going to speech therapy at the same time. And for the purpose of not stuttering, teach me techniques so I won't stutter. So I had all those things going on. And then finally, I went to my first NSA conference out of sheer desperation, or my first full NSA conference out of sheer desperation in 2010. I still hang the poster. That's the poster of that conference behind me. And I went to the Covert Stuttering workshop that was led by Kathy Olish and I think it was Gary Rentschler. And there was a panel of speakers. I feel like they were from the University of Buffalo, but I'm not sure. And they started talking about covert stuttering. And I never heard a name put for my kind of stuttering because I didn't stutter all the time. And there's some days, sometimes I'd be okay, sometimes I wasn't. And at that point, when I heard other people share what they did and how they felt, that was like the start of it. Because when I saw those people and I saw that they were intelligent, I thought they were pretty cool people. Like I liked them as people. They weren't how I thought of myself. And I thought, wait a second, if they're up there doing this, it opened the door for maybe something else can change. And then I went to the NSA conference, and that I went to I was at the NSA conference, and then I met other people at the conference and talked to them, and they I finally had hope that maybe things could change. And I worked with my speech therapist to teach me techniques so that I won't stutter, to help me learn how to voluntarily stutter, to help me get comfortable with hearing myself stutter. I would record myself in those sessions. I would hear them back. Like, oh, I don't sound like a monster. What am I? He's like, oh, so much of this was in my head. Just it was magnified, because I lived alone with it for so long. So that's really where things changed. I hope that answers
Great.
your question.
Thanks, Rachel. I want to take a step back too, to being growing up. Now, for all of us growing up, starting early on, I don't know, first grade, second grade, we're all sizing each other up, right? We're checking people out. Who do we like? What looks good? What doesn't look good? Who sounds good? What do you wear? Who's good at kickball on the playground? We're learning about each other, and through that, we're trying to decide what we want to be good at, right? So I want to be more like this guy on the playground, and I want to sound like her in the classroom because she's really smart. And so we're constantly, from the get-go, we're comparing ourselves to other people. And stuttering really messes with that a little bit, because odds are pretty good nobody else in your class or in your school was stuttering. And so you really stand out. And what does it mean to stand out? Well, you guys have heard the term stigma. Society likes things to be even and smooth and all of that. And anything that stands out, we question, we wonder about, we worry about. And stuttering certainly does that. Stuttering is very strange. If you haven't heard it, it's very strange. If you have heard it, it still feels strange. It's a feeling of loss of control, which nobody else seems to experience. Why do I have this? And so in the end, society doesn't like things that stand out like that are different. And that's where stigma comes from. And that's why certain identities, certain communities get marginalized. It's because they're different, and we don't understand that. And so we're not gonna pay as much attention to them as we are to these people who are more like me over here. And so that's what we fight against as a society, is this stigma of being different. And stuttering is very different. And so that's where a lot of being covert comes from. If you're able to do it, you can fit back in. You can sound normal. Even if you're not, you can sound normal. And that's a great relief. And at first, it feels like a big win if you can pass as someone who's fluent. And maybe that lasts for years. I think eventually it catches up with everybody. The older we get, the sharper we are at picking up on differences. Maybe the less control we have, those things that used to work maybe don't work so well anymore. And we start to make decisions based on that too. I know so many college students who dropped a course because they had to give a speech in the class, or two speeches in the class. I don't know if anybody can identify with that. So big decisions get made because of that. And so other, like mental illness is marginalized, gender identity, sexual orientation. These are things that are not normal, not typical, I should say. And so those are things that are carefully guarded by the people who fit into those categories. Some people are very open about it, and I think that's wonderful. Some people are not, and it's hard to blame them. We all Nobody wants to really stand out, especially in a way that seems strange or unusual. And so covert stuttering is very attractive if you're able to pull it off. And so then you're kind of stuck because now nobody knows. And so what if you accidentally slip and stutter in front of your friends and they've never heard you do that before? Now you got some explaining to do, right? What was that, Bob? You know? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Does anybody else want to talk about falling into that trap of hiding their stuttering and how you felt like you had it beat? Because that's pretty common. Who can identify with that? Yep, Peter?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I have to explain a few things first. I've been around a long time. I'm 79 years old, and when I first started to stutter, nobody knew what it was. They had no idea what caused it or anything. And I went to a shrink, and he said it was, that I had a problem with my parents and all this kind of, crazy stuff. But I don't want to tell my whole story because I don't think we have that much time. But
Well, did you learn to hide it at some point?
No, I really didn't hide it. That's the thing that I got to the point where I said to myself that sure I have a problem, but if people don't like it, they can leave the room. I had to give this kind of attitude, or else I couldn't hold myself. I was shy because of that, and I didn't do a lot of things because of my speech. There's no question about that. But to make a story short, I became fairly successful in what I would say in spite of my stuttering, because of my personality and how smart I was and this and that. So people, as I grew up, they accepted it a lot more than they did as I was a kid. Of course, when you grew up, people would point at you and say, "Oh, what's wrong with you? You stutter." They would make fun of you, and then they would try to talk like you as a stuttering person, making fun of you. Of course, everybody ran into that, I'm sure. But I mean, I've stuttered all my life, and I still do to some extent. But people accept it, I think, a lot more than they ever have, and they just wait until you're finished, and then you move on. I think that's becoming more prevalent now. And of course, I don't know if people know, but it's not something that you can correct, because as far as I've found out, it's a brain problem in your head. It's not, it works in funny ways. I went to Collins College, and that was it's a stuttering situation, and you learned a lot there from the standpoint it was a hearing problem in a sense. In other words, when you can't hear your speech, you don't stutter. It's like singing. You don't stutter when you sing either. But I learned a lot of how to help myself so I don't stutter in regards to pronouncing words. A lot of people stutter. They try to hit the word hard like a B, but there is a way to, if you hit it softly, you can, in some cases, counteract that. Now, of course, you can substitute words, and I do that all the time. But I don't want to, I don't want to give you a life history. It would take too long to my pros and cons of my life. But it's a problem, and it's the thing that's important is that it's becoming more acceptable. People are more understanding now than they ever have been, and I think that's great.
That's true. We've come a long way. That Hollins program is pretty intensive. I've heard about that. So I don't know, you got some help from that, is that what you said?
Yes, I certainly did.
Okay. Let's go back then. Who else recalls that sense of victory when your hiding your stuttering was complete and you could enter just about any situation without fear because you knew you could navigate around your stuttering? Did anybody experience that at some point? Isaiah's nodding.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit. So I am currently a pharmacy student. So I am in my last year of school, and like a part of the like schooling is you're at like different sites every 6 weeks. So I'm constantly meeting brand new people all the time. And I remember for about like a 6 week span, I think I did a pretty good job in hiding my stutter to where I don't think anyone um like really noticed it um until the end when I had to give a final presentation. Then it kind of came out a little bit, and but like everyone was very like like accepting, and kind of shows that after a while you start to have like strategies and things to try to hide it, but then in the end I'm sure everyone is going to find out. So um I've tried also um uh like being upfront and like saying I'm a person who stutters. So I've tried both, and honestly, I'm not sure if one way works better than the other, but in the end, I feel like everyone is gonna find out, and I've been very lucky that I've been accepted into like a lot of the different places, and hasn't really caused any issues either. So
One of my former patients was a farm student here at South Carolina, and that's a brutal program, man. They really work you hard. And he was very involved in a lot of extracurricular stuff too. So he did a lot of talking, and he got very good at disclosing his stuttering, making sure everybody knew. Does anyone else use disclosure in here? Do you let people know that you stutter? Do you let them know up front, or do you let them know after a while, Keith?
Yeah, I usually don't do it right away because I don't want to introduce myself as, hi, I'm Keith the Stutterer. I usually wait until I have a block and then I explain it. Oh, by the way, I stutter a little bit once in a while. No big deal. Just so you know what's going on.
So who else uses disclosure? And if you do you do it like Keith does? You wait till you stutter, or do you let them know up front? Yeah, Maria.
Hi, I I am a special education teacher in early intervention, and so I I I go into people's homes, and and on the first visit, I tell them that I am a person who stutters. So in case I do stutter, which I can't, I I am an overt stutterer. There's no way I can hide my stuttering, and I never even thought to do that. But so and so it, in case I stutter, they aren't like, oh no, he's having a heart attack, or and so I'm open about it with them, because to me, I'm being up run with them, and it isn't a big deal either. So that's how come I tell them, yes, I'm a person who stutters.
You made me think of something, Maria, when you were saying that. You said you've never been able to hide it.
No, I never even thought of that.
Now, what do you think
Hiding
about
that.
it now? Do you, looking back, do you wish you could have hid it some? Here we've got a room full of people who have hidden it at some point in their lives.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I'm just honest about it, and
Mhm.
that's who I am. And I have always stuttered, so it was just me, a part of me, I should say. Yeah.
I say that only because I have met people who are overt and cannot hide it,
Mm-hmm.
who are a little
Mm-hmm.
bit envious of those who are covert.
Oh.
And I've also seen it the other way. I've seen people who are covert and can't help trying to hide and wish they didn't do that. I wish they were more open about it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of goes both ways, I guess.
Yeah, think so.
All right. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Anybody else?
And
Forgot how we
yeah.
got into this train of thought. Rachel, why don't you jump in here?
Well, Annie has her hand up.
Oh, good. Hey, Annie.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Charlie. So great to see you guys.
You as well.
I just been thinking about this, and like stuttering is cyclical and changes. So does my attitude regarding my stutter. So sometimes I will disclose right at the beginning. I guess it's situational. And then sometimes I'm more like Keith. I wait for it to happen and I say I stutter. And so I don't know if I could say one or the other all the time. I think it's also built on how I'm feeling emotionally or with confidence or not, just for me, it's been a really good tool over the years based on what I need. If that makes any sense at all.
Does.
It does. And I think like what I've heard is, if people couple things, people will respond to my stuttering. They'll look to me for cues of how they should respond. Most of the time when I was like looking down, not making eye contact, then it would really, I think, I'm not blaming myself because I didn't know how else to do it. But I think then they would be like, oh, wow, this is a big deal. Like what Maria was saying, it's not a big deal. I really made it a big deal. I don't know how else to be. So, but and then what Annie just said about, it depends, I may disclose, I may not. When I was in the throes of being covert, there was no, it depends. There was no flexibility. There was just, I'm gonna either not stutter or forget it. Like I was such a perfectionist about my speech. Like I had to sound perfect. And I just put that on myself, which made me stutter more. Because I left no room for mistakes. And then and then when I would stutter, it would shatter my self-esteem more. I'd feel, all those negative feelings would just be exacerbated. So I really, the thing about coming to meeting all these beautiful people in the NSA is I heard for the first time, like, oh, I may stutter, I may not. And it doesn't matter. I'm still the same person. I just, like, that was a revelation to me. What your whole life doesn't hinge on whether or not you stuttered today. Like I didn't understand that. Took me a long, long time to like open up to that way of thinking, but it's been so worth it. So I just wanted to share that.
John has given us some nice thoughts in the chat here. He's out in the business world, and he knows that people don't like to be surprised. So as soon as he stutters for the first time, he discloses and explains that. Let him know what's going on, and that puts him at ease because he now has permission to stutter. And ironically, and I don't think it's that ironic actually, he tends to stutter less in that situation. And I wonder if anybody else would identify with that when you've let the other person know that you stutter, or they already know that you stutter. Does that make it easier for you? And does making it easier ironically result in you maybe stuttering a little less? Maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can share, Charlie. I was gonna say, like, I think that's a really interesting point that John made. And for me, I think when I put it out there and I disclose, I think that just takes all of the pressure and that kind of like, I don't know if it's the fear or the anxiety of wondering what people are going to think about me. It's just like that gives me permission to just be more comfortable. And kind of one small thing is I remember I was going to speech therapy when I was an adult. And this is before I had any like awareness of what I was doing with like my mouth or my, my body. And my speech therapist, I was having a block and she was like, just stop right there. And she was like, do you feel all of the tension that's in your neck, that's in your, your shoulders? And like, I had no idea what I was doing while I was stuttering. It was just like, it was an out of body experience. And so I feel like for me, once I let people know that I stutter, it just kind of releases this like pressure valve and I just feel more comfortable and free. Like I'm still going to stutter, but I'll stutter with less tension, less pressure, and it's kind of a better experience.
So I think that's a good general piece of advice is either let them know up front or let them know when you stutter for the first time. It takes a lot of the pressure off. If you've never done it before, it's not going to be easy, but it gets easier. A lot of people will say, well, they can tell I'm stuttering. Why should I tell them that I stutter? They can hear me stuttering. Well, I think it's important for you to take ownership of it and say, by the way, that was me stuttering just there, and you probably hear it again. Make sure you don't apologize for it. That's really important because it's not your fault. You didn't decide to stutter. So you shouldn't have to apologize for it. It's not a decision that you made. So.
And Charlie, I think that's a good point about, why should I tell people? Like so for me, and everybody's different, I say that I stutter for me because it actually helps me communicate better. Like Carl said, the pressure valve is, the pressure is released. And now what started happening is I would stutter and then I would be like, oh, in my mind, they already know that I stutter because I just told them. So it wasn't like this interruption, this work stoppage, if you will, of speech. Like, oh, I already told them. So of course, so yeah, I'm a person who stutters, so that means I'm gonna stutter. But for me, I had to start with very, very low risk situations when I was first doing this. Like I think I maybe started with a retail store or something like that. And then I worked my way up to to my job. and to telling my boss and my coworkers, and it was an evolution of thought, and I started to be like, okay, I'm going to experiment. Let me just see how this is going to be. But it took everything I had to be able to do that, to finally disclose. And every time I would disclose, I would be like, oh, the sky didn't fall. Like I'm still here. I'm still alive. And it was, I mean, it was a revelation that I could do that and things would still be okay.
You hit on something really interesting there, Rachel. If you're not in the habit of disclosure and you want to try it and you want to start using it, or you think you want to start using it, start in a low stake situation like Rachel did. Do it with a stranger, somebody you know you'll never see again, and then work your way up to those more higher stake situations. And it's important to keep in mind that disclosure is not for your listener. It's for you. It's for you. And maybe it helps them, maybe it doesn't, but it definitely helps you. And so that's why you do it, not to help them. So, all right. Anybody else want to jump in?
I would just say, I don't really disclose. I was never covert, but it wasn't because I didn't want to be. I just wasn't able to. If I spoke for long enough, I couldn't hide. But I would try all the tricks of like changing words and, leaving the room when I could. I couldn't always, but if it wasn't awkward, leaving the room or changing words or any little tricks I would try. I didn't, but eventually if I spoke, it would just come out. I couldn't hide it, but in my own way, even though it was very obvious and everybody knew if they spoke to me for any length of time, I kind of pretended it didn't exist for a long time. Like it's kind of weird because it was obvious, but I wasn't like, but I wasn't acknowledging it. So I still feel weird about actually disclosing it because part of what I wanted was just to be like everybody else. And I don't see any other situations where a person comes up to you and says, I have XYZ. It's kind of just not anything that anybody else has to do or wants to. But when I feel comfortable enough, I'll certainly talk about it with people I feel comfortable with. But what I found helped me a lot was taking ownership of it and getting to the point where I stutter more openly. And so when I'm having a time when my stuttering makes it hard to speak, I'll look the person in the eye. I'll look the person in the eye, and that like eye contact and having that connection with them is how I let them know, like, I'm okay. This is okay. It's all good. And that works. Like I feel much more comfortable, and they also seem to feel much more comfortable too, because when I was trying to hide it, I would like look away or look up or like close my eyes. I had a lot of sort of tics and whatnot. So all of these things, aside from my speech being odd, I looked odd. I was acting odd. And I found by just changing how I present to them, speaking very confidently, looking them in the eye, as it was happening, they understand I'm okay. So I don't feel like I have to turn it into a turn it into a closure really. But on the other hand, if it's someone I feel comfortable with and I'm having a hard time, I might say, oh, I'm having a really hard time, or words are hard, or this word is hard for me, and kind of without making it a big to do, I discuss it with them and I feel comfortable enough.
Something interesting that you said, Lisa, was you maintain eye contact. And that's kind of like disclosure, right? It's like everything's okay, is what you're saying by maintaining eye contact. I got this. Don't freak out. It's not quite saying I stutter, but it is a way of showing ownership of what's going on, right?
Right. And it was really, I mean, I'll tell you, when I first started it, it was incredibly hard, but you get more comfortable with it. And the person, like, I would watch the person I was speaking to, and I don't see it a lot currently, because I do go in with a very confident attitude. But in the beginning, I could see the person was like, kind of, you could see they're confused or uneasy. And as I looked them in the eye and I kept speaking and they saw I'm okay, they like completely relaxed. And being able to witness that helped me a lot. And so I feel like I didn't have to like actually disclose and use like the words, but I got it across, and I was more comfortable, and that they were more comfortable also.
Anybody else have issues with eye contact we want to talk about? Anybody struggle with that? Or you used to and now you don't? Or Tess, are you going to jump in?
John had his hand raised.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
John had his hand up first.
Go ahead, John.
Oh boy, I get to jump in front of you guys. Hey, so Lisa, I love the term you said, taking ownership. And I'm going to put it in terms like this right here. Being a covert stutterer, you're in the back seat. Someone else is driving the car. You're in the back seat. Taking ownership means, wait a minute, I'm taking the steering wheel. I'm going to direct the conversation. I'm going to lead what is happening. So to me, that's why I disclose. And I'm going to tell a quick little story that not a lot of folks know. I got a brother who is hyper competitive. My dad stuttered as a kid and a teenager. My brother stuttered, but he was a covert person who stuttered. He managed for decades to hide it. But guess what happened? His health hurt. Cholesterol, heart issues, blah, blah, blah. Because so many things that he is hiding, he is just there. It just impacts his life. Now, I'm not the total healthiest person, but he now understands. He's turning 60 this year, and he has finally embraced his stutter. He even says he's a person who stutters. And it's pretty cool. Now he's taking ownership of that conversation. He's not trying to hide it. And I think he feels better about himself now. But man, his stutter journey took 5 decades for him to come to the point to say, wait a minute, I'm going to come clean. I'm going to not try to hold things in, because if you hold things in, what happens? There's tension, there's pressure. At some point, that pressure's got to come out somewhere. And it came out with him having various health challenges. I know that takes the conversation in a totally different direction than eye contact, but I just think that it is so important for us to, as Lisa said, take ownership of who we are, and knowing clearly that our stutter makes us a better whoever we are.
John, you got to get him to the conference, man. What do you think?
Could you repeat that?
I said you got to get him to the conference.
Into the conference, dude.
Yeah.
I've been to conferences. I've done a whole bunch of stuff.
No, I'm talking about your brother.
Oh, my brother.
NSA, man.
So my brother, that's a different conversation for a different day. The conference can have an impact on so many people. I think for him, his conference is acknowledging his stutter. That's his conference. He knows me. We have talked so much about so many things that I don't think a conference will change his life. But what changed his life was acknowledging his stutter. That's again, so the conference, it's a different thing.
Is there anyone who can I ask a question? Just say, is there anyone maybe who hasn't shared yet who'd want to speak on? Oh, Tim.
I would love to share just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Charlie, very, very good to see you. Haven't
as
seen
well.
you in a long time.
Mhm.
And Annie's in there somewhere. I haven't seen Annie since the late 90s. So great seeing you. But it begs the question, what kind of shame and embarrassment is embedded in I can't disclose? Because so many people can't. And I just want to make 2 points. One is, in my 33 years of helping people who stutter and years of trying to help myself, we've learned about solution focused brief therapy, mindfulness, CBT, NLP, REBT, medicine for anxiety and depression, and other different things. So, social anxiety, the fear of stuttering, is a huge part of stuttering. And the iceberg metaphor that we all know about. And when you think about if we just disclose, so many things collapse. Our tendency to try to read someone's mind, that I'm being judged and scrutinized for stuttering, a lot of the fear and anxiety goes melting down. And so it is so straightforward in a sense if we just tell people that we stutter. And Charlie said the great thing is never apologize. It's just sometimes I stutter. And I went into high school and college doing everything I could to not stutter. And now I tell all my high school students, my college students, email your teacher, tell them you stutter. So there's no testing bias, right? To reduce your fear. So that's something I didn't do, but I share all the time. Charlie, I know it was during the day today. I tried sending you something. I'm not sure if you got it. But something that I do with my clients is I create a mind map. In the middle of the page is an oval that says why disclose. And then you build a map, with all the lines, all the reasons why it will help. Because ultimately, whether it's you or me or a client, if you help people with stutter, ultimately it has to be, why is it important to them? What is the benefit to them? Because we can tell them, go disclose, go tell people that you stutter. But the real buy-in is when people see the value to them. So I just wanted to share that. But, in this day and age, they understand stuttering so much more, whether it's Joe Biden's story or something. But I also want to encourage everybody to see the movie When I Stutter. Because if a person who stutters hasn't seen it yet, or parents, they look at all these people who stuttered and talk about how it used to affect them so immensely, and now they're more free of it. It's also awesome for the kind of parents who scrutinize their kids to watch that movie, because several people talk about how their own parents bothered them. So the movie When I Stutter is ageless. So thank you for hosting this. Thanks for my moment there. Thank you, guys.
I'll
And-
second that. Fabulous film. Go ahead, Rachel.
And Tess, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment about the eye contact thing, but I don't know if we want to backtrack and go back to that or not.
It's very relevant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you had said, Rachel, really resonated with me, and I think definitely when I'm talking to people, I tend to avoid eye contact. And but then in turn, like, that makes them think I'm lying or like I'm not being truthful to them. So it can also have negative consequences as well. So I was just gonna share that thought.
it's so, when I would test, it's so funny that you said about lying because uh my old job, our office was getting a visit from one of the Inspector General's offices, and we had to talk about certain things about this project we were working on. And I think I was maybe, I don't know, like 5 months from having gone to the NSA conference and learning about disclosure. And I said to them, as we were introducing ourselves, I did say, and I stutter, and I made sure I was like looking at them, and because I wanted them to know that any kind of hesitation is not me being untruthful. It's because, or it's because of the stuttering. So I have thought about that also. I'm glad you shared that. Yeah, we
It's
are
interesting.
present. Yeah.
Police officers are trained to see if someone's struggling with their words, to suspect that they might not be being truthful. And so that doesn't help us, does it? For what it's worth, I think that another reason that I think disclosure can be really helpful. It's like, I'm not nervous. This is just a thing. It just happens. So.
Hey, Charlie, I've got something that I wanted to share. Kind of, Tim put something in the chat that I thought was really interesting. He said during eye contact aversion, we disassociate, and it made me think about how whenever I'm meeting someone new, I'm always stressing about, oh my God, I know I'm going to stutter on my name. I always stutter on my name, and it's just like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. But I noticed that most times when I meet someone new, if they tell me what their name is first, I usually always forget it because I'm stressing out in my own head, wondering if I'm going to be able to say my own name. And so that's something that I've had to become aware of, just being in the moment and being present, because I feel like covert stuttering, it just takes so much mental, you know, energy from you because you're constantly having to word substitute or do some type of trick or technique. And so I think, that being in the moment and, eye contact can probably help with that, but it can really, be a deterrent and a way for us to not, be able to connect as well as we would like to.
Thanks, Carl. That's good. I wonder if you, in that situation, if they tell you their name first, if you can really try to remember that, think about, Bob, 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 or whatever it is, and then say your name and maybe see if that has any, because you're not worrying about you saying your own name if you're trying to think about remembering his name,
Yeah, and well, the way that I get around that, which I think helps me as a person who stutters, is I'll try to introduce myself first, because I feel like if I can control the interaction, I'll be like, oh, hey, my name's Carl, by the way. I'll add on those extra words, and so it'll kind of give me a running start. But it also,
exactly.
yeah, but it also kind of helps me to put myself out there first, because I'm like, if I'm on, and it's kind of weird to think of it this way, but if I'm on the defensive and I'm like waiting for them to ask me my name, or I know we've talked for 10 minutes and I haven't said my name, and so it's like the anticipation of it. So if I can just get it out there first, that I find that helps me out a lot.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And um, to that point, one of the things that I used to do at work is if we had, so I did a lot of conference presentations and things, and we'd have meetings, status meetings where we'd have to talk about what we were working on. I would ask my boss, can I go first? because it was the anticipatory anxiety, that anticipation, that waiting that killed me. So like, and I had full-blown panic attacks and all that. So that really helped, because then I felt like people are saying, it gave me some kind of control. And then I wasn't sitting there thinking about my stuttering, scanning words and all those things. But that helped me a lot too. There's some folks who I don't know, has anyone not, anyone on the line, is there anyone on the line who has never told anyone that they stutter? Like, are you still very much covert, and which is, survival side? But is anyone who maybe hasn't spoken, wants to chime in? Jen.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I've been at the same job now for like nearly 20 years, and I've only just now in the past like 18 months or so talked about it with anybody. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, everybody there, they've been my colleagues for many, many years, and I feel like they have to know that I stutter, and it's probably just like the elephant in the room, but I would never bring it up, and nobody ever asked me about it, and I'm only just starting to talk openly, and not only at my office, but with others as well. Like because I was covert for so long, and I still pretty much am. Like it's still a very uncomfortable thing for me to do, but I just feel like I gotta start somewhere. And so I've just been kind of easing into, like in terms of the office and like at work and stuff, like asking for like accommodation, and if I do stutter in front of someone maybe for the first time when I'm just meeting, I'll say, "Oh, I have a stutter. Like, I might just need an extra like little bit of time or something like that." Like I'm trying even still to figure out how to say it, and how to make it more comfortable for me and stuff. But I think about it sometimes, and I'm like, it's just crazy that it's taking me 20 years to feel now that I can start to kind of advertise myself as who I am, and not try to hide this big piece of myself, because it's very painful to hide it. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to hide it for so long. So, but yeah, I've felt like ever since I joined the NSA, which is about maybe like a year and a half ago, I feel like it's really helped me like just to talk to people who understand, and just to know that like there's another option out there. Like I don't have to hide who I am,
Jen, how does it feel? Talking to people about it for the first time, people that you've worked with for years. How does that
they totally understand, and they're not ever, like, "Oh, really? You started?" Like we had no idea. Like they know, right? We just talk about it, and like I recently, not that recently, it was, I guess it was last June. I had to go for a really, really big interview, and I was so nervous about it. It was a really good opportunity, and I knew I was going to stutter. There was a presentation aspect of the interview also, and then it was a panel interview, and I just knew I wanted to be on my, like, I wanted to bring my best help to the interview, so I disclosed to the interviewers before it started. Like I do have a, you know, a stutter. I may just need like a few extra moments, or I don't want you to think that this is tied in any way to my like intelligence and my capabilities. And they were so understanding and just like, of course not, we would never think that. We're glad that you felt comfortable to tell us if there's absolutely anything at all we can do for you. Please let us know. They were just, it was just so reassuring. And as we were, or I'm not sure who said earlier, it helps you in the fact that because you've told them, now you're not so afraid to hide the stutter, and then you actually don't even find that it's as bad in that instance because the pressure's off, right? So it's been helpful for me. It's hard, but helpful.
Isn't that great? Doesn't that feel wonderful?
It does. It's been, I mean, it's, like I said, I'm still on this journey of like, who can I tell, who can I can't, who can't, like, because I just grew up in a house where, you know, which I'm sure many of us did, where it wasn't okay to stutter. It was seen as something wrong. You had to slow down. You know, it was a bad thing. So like, I just grew up feeling like I had to hide that piece of myself, and I've never really outgrown that. Like I'm having to literally retrain my brain to be like, you didn't do anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. It's okay. And I think people don't care as much as I think they maybe do either. Like, I think I care a lot more than anyone else. So yeah,
You
journey
got
for
it. Keep
sure.
going, man. Keep
Appreciate it.
keep telling people, whether they
I'm
know or
trying.
not.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a thought and I lost it. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about the conference, the National Stuttering Association Conference. Is there anyone in here who has not been yet? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I maybe some people can back me up on this. I don't know if I can put it in words, but you won't regret it. It's life-changing for
It
everyone,
truly,
including people like me who don't stutter.
yeah, it
Um,
it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. I can't even describe how everything changed. You know, I hid stuttering from from my now husband. We dated long distance for 5 years using the telephone. There wasn't there was, well, you could text like a couple of letters, I guess, but back then. But I mean, I just, that's how covert I was. And the conference just changed everything.
when you get to the conference, you're normal.
Well, and
Everybody's
you know,
different.
it's wild. When I left the conference and I room with Maria Turner, we're roommates. And I tell her, when I leave the conference and I go, let's say I'm at the airport, interacting with people who don't stutter, I feel, God, their speech is so boring. Like there's no, like, everybody's stutter is so personal to them. Like everyone has a unique stutter. It's like, it's really beautiful. I think it's amazing. And but that's just like, who knew? Like, this is coming from someone who swore up and down, I will never, ever voluntarily tell someone that I stutter. Never. And I swore that for years. Oh,
A former,
James.
go
Oh
ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say, I saw James nodding in agreement just before. I don't know. I just thought.
Oh, I don't know what I actually
Oh,
forgot what I was,
sorry.
no. But yeah, you know, as you were saying, seeing the people that haven't spoken yet. But yeah, this has been a great session. I definitely was interested to come to it specifically. I feel like one thing that I would say is that becoming less covert, I feel like it's kind of like a process, and I feel like I'm still in that process. So it's and definitely there's been things that have been said that have made me aware of ways that I'm covert that I wasn't exactly, I guess, seeing as you know, ways exactly, but yeah.
So a former student of mine went to the NSA conference with me several years back, and she said, this is amazing. She said, it's like Stutter Island. You know, everybody stutters on Stutter Island. And it's also an important experience for people who don't stutter, because now we're different, right? I'm walking down the hall and everybody is stuttering. And by the way, you don't sleep much at all at the conference because you stay up all night and talk, because it feels great to talk for a change. I don't know, I can't, and if you've never been before, and if finances may be keeping you from going, the NSA will help you get there. The NSA will help you get there. There are funds specifically for first timers to get you to the conference. And there's a reason for that, because we got to get you there, because once you go, you'll understand. Carl knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I went to my first one in 2016, which was a more bizarro experience, like John said, because it was the NSA and then the ISA, the International Stuttering Association. It was like a joint conference, so there were even more people there and people from around the world. So you heard like stuttering in different languages, which blew my mind even more. But I remember that year, one of the days I was there, I said, okay, I know most people here stutter. I'm going to make a really deliberate effort to maintain eye contact while I'm stuttering. Because I figured, hey, I'll do it here because it's safe. And it was kind of funny because when I got back home for like 3 days after that, I was at work and I just was maintaining really intense eye contact because it was so hard to kind of break that down and go back to normal. But you know, it just was it was a really great experience, and I've tried to make every one that I can since then. So if you have never gone before, it just is, it'll completely change your world.
The time is
For the
flying,
better.
and we don't have a whole lot of time left. I would like to take this opportunity to invite people who maybe haven't contributed yet or have questions and haven't jumped in yet. Please, I want you to have that opportunity to share anything you'd like or to ask any questions. Or if there's a question that we haven't gotten to, jump in on that too. But if you haven't spoken, I'd love to hear from you. We would love to. Anybody else have any burning questions before we wrap things up here?
I would like to ask a question, Charlie. I've had a hard time all my life finding a job that I really wanted, because I stutter. I just turned down a lot, and I wonder how that affects all the other people. If they had a hard time, or do they pick a job or a future that they don't have to speak, or they don't they don't have a problem with it?
Great question, Peter. Anyone choose a career path because of stuttering or in spite of stuttering?
Jen raised her hand.
Yeah, so I've worked in the same job for like 20 years, and it's not an industry where I have to do much speaking, like a little bit here and there, but it's not really like any type of presentations or anything like that. But back in 2020, I actually made the choice to go back to school and get my master's degree, to become a psychotherapist. I really felt at that stage that my speech was in a very fluent spot, and I thought, oh, here's my chance. I'm gonna go get like this degree like I always wanted. And I went through school and I spent $50,000 to get this degree. And I've never even put the degree to use because I'm too scared to put myself out there. And so it's just, I hear you when you say it's held you back. It's really, really holding me back, like professionally. It isn't that I don't have like an okay job. I do. It's a job, but it's not my career. Like it's not what I want to do as a career. When I can't figure out a way to make that switch because I'm still in like I'm trying. I'm on this healing journey, as I call it, but I'm still trying to get comfortable hearing myself stutter. And the thought of now um, putting myself in a spot where people are going to pay me to talk to me, I it's harder than I ever thought it was going to be. And I'm like, who am I to charge someone to come and talk to me for an hour? Like, I feel like I should be paying them or something. It's like, I don't know. I'm just in my own head, but it's really holding me back.
So a lot of people who stutter go to psychotherapy.
Yes, they
You're in a
do.
unique position to empathize.
The thing that I had to do because because I stutter is I had to work harder and longer than anybody else in order to prove to everyone that I was worth more than just a stutterer.
Jen, in the comments, Carl says that he's a good friend of mine is a psychotherapist who stutters. He can connect you. Oh, Carl's right there.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah, incredible. If you have the info for them.
Yeah, Jen. I will drop my email address in the chat, and if you want to send me a message, we can connect
Yeah, for
offline.
sure. Yeah, for sure. I'll message you. Appreciate that.
Well, you did it. Time flies when you're having fun. We're bumping up on 9:30, which is when we're supposed to wrap it up. I don't know what wrapping it up involves exactly. Really thank you all for being here. I've learned a lot from you guys. I hope y'all have picked up a nugget or two from this experience. And I really hope, if not this year, soon you guys will get to an NSA conference. You will not regret it, I promise. Rachel, closing words.
I'm just so happy that you all decided to come here and just and talk and just listen. And I couldn't have done this without other people on the journey with me, without meeting other people who stutter. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have been where I am today. I needed to see other people who had the similar experience and know that I wasn't alone and that there was nothing wrong with me and that there was a way to move forward. So you've all really have helped me tonight, and I hope this has been helpful for you.